Hello, my name is Skylar.
And my name is Tyler. I pay respects to the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation where Dad's podcast is recorded.
I live on Bunjil land. I believe Bunjil is the creator of land, of our first peoples. He is the creator of the land of where I am right now.
I pay my respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples.
This land always was and always will be Aboriginal land.
Hello and welcome to Over the Rainbow, a podcast series dedicated to all things Rainbow Dads. This is Murray and I am your host, and today I have Anthony Lekkas joining me to discuss navigating your relationship alongside being a dad. Anthony has previously come on my show to discuss being a donor dad, but I thought it would be good to get him in with a more professional cap on as a relationship counsellor and expert. Anthony Lekkas is a family violence consultant, trainer, relationship counsellor, and accredited mental health social worker. His work spans over 2 decades working in the LGBTQIA and mainstream not-for-profit health sector and in private practice. Anthony is an advocate for the Bi+ community and is the founder of the Melbourne Bisexual Network, as well as the co-creator of one of Joy FM's only radio programs dedicated to Bi+ people, Triple Bypass. He's also a proud rainbow dad, and when not busy caring for others in his work, he is consumed by the needs of his gorgeous boys who are 5 and 2 years of age. Look, becoming a dad is a life-changing experience. Every area of your life is affected, but especially your relationship with your significant other. How do you be a great dad, but also be a great partner? Let's take a listen to Anthony and maybe find out how. Hello and welcome to Over the Rainbow, a podcast series dedicated to all things rainbow dads. Sitting in front of me, I have my first repeat guest, Anthony Lekkas. Anthony Lekkas, welcome to my podcast.
Yep, thanks, Murray.
Now, Anthony, you came on and chatted to us about your experiences of being a rainbow donor dad. But during that episode, you mentioned you dropped that you were a relationship counsellor. And I thought, I need to ask him back. I need to ask him back and unpick his brain, because I think being in a relationship and becoming new parents is a juicy episode. So, Anthony, tell us about your professional side.
Yep. So, well, I'm an accredited mental health social worker and a trained relationship and couples therapist. In fact, most of the day in my professional life I spend working with relationships in counselling, and that can be all sorts of types of relationships. And I get a lot of I work with Rainbow Door. I get a lot of referrals from Rainbow Door in my role.
And that's run through Switchboard, right?
Run through Switchboard. Yeah. And that means it's such a privilege actually to work therapeutically with relationships from community and being part of community, because you get to experience a whole bunch of different types of relationship structures, relationship types, different genders, mixed orientation relationships where there could be a combination of sexualities all in the one relationship with more than 2 people in it as well. So it's very complex and nuanced work. I don't say that I always get it right every time, but it's such a rich space to learn and to support people in. And also, and sometimes, these people come with children as well, which we're seeing that more and more now. I think queer people are coming in the door, not only with being married, which is not uncommon now, ever since 2017 in marriage equality, but also people who are actively talking about having children, actively planning to have children, who are in negotiations with surrogates, and also even if they're, just wanting to discuss whether or not they're going to be dads, or in fact they have children, one or multiple children. So that's coming in the door more and more now with Rainbow Dads.
So how would you say that your training to be a counsellor has prepared you for such diversity that you're seeing?
I think it hasn't prepared me a great deal. My formal training gave me some really solid theoretical frameworks around attachment theory, around emotion-focused work with supporting people to access their vulnerabilities, to be able to talk to their partners about it, and hopefully attract a very compassionate and loving response so that they can work sensitively with their worries that they have in their relationships. But In terms of diversity, I think this is just an emerging aspect of the profession now. We're seeing diversity and inclusion trainings coming up. We're seeing some trainings around working with non-monogamy and polyamory and relationship counselling, but it's not. It's you have to go looking for it. It is not. I mean, unless you work for a queer organisation, I mean, having worked for LGBTI community services, counselling organisations, we often talked about non-monogamy. It wasn't uncommon for gay men or queer men to come in the door in relationships that were mostly non-monogamous. I mean, it was fairly uncommon, I think, to work with gay men when they were strictly monogamous for the entire relationship.
Yeah.
But it was there. I'm just not, one of the questions I noticed that we ask in couples therapy in our intakes when I worked for LGBTI organisations was to ask them about how do you define your relationship structure?
Yeah.
You're polyamorous or you're non-monogamous. If you are non-monogamous, what does that look like? And when I've worked for mainstream organisations, never gets asked. There's this presumption that you are straight for starters.
For sure.
And monogamous.
Yeah, which is why I would imagine same-sex couples would seek out an LGBT inclusive therapist, right?
I think so. That's one of the main things, I think, absolutely, to feel like they're going to be understood without having
and not judged.
And not judged, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, so let's get into it. I think a very interesting discussion can be had in terms of having it with a relationship expert is navigating your relationship with children in the mix. And that is, with a child, a newborn, as well as once you get into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just in terms of how do you keep the relationship alive?
Well, that's a good question. I'm still trying to work that out. But I think that what we see in the couple therapy space is that this is one of the aspects of their troubles as a couple that they've really, and I think gay men or if rainbow dads, because our relationships are at risk of being viewed as problematic anyway, because
What do you mean by that?
Well, we have the same-sex attractions and making love to your male partner was once a criminal offence in this country. It was considered a mental illness. And to be married to that person that you love was, not made possible until very recently.
Right. So the stigma and the carry-on is still around.
I think it's
embedded.
It's embedded.
Yeah.
It's so entrenched, and it's still so there. It's so subtle. I mean, homophobia in 2024 looks very different to homophobia in the 1950s, 60s, or 70s.
What do you think it looks like today?
I think it's around nodding politely and saying, "Oh, that's nice," and moving on, and then maybe keeping your true opinion to yourself. I think speaking openly and saying gay men should not be having children is a very unpopular position to make explicit. I think that'll attract a lot of negative attention. And so I think people are very different about how they do their homophobia today. But, any rainbow dad listening to this would understand that there is an anxiety or this apprehension even at times of presenting yourself as a dad of children and going to mainstream spaces.
Oh, wow, Anthony, that is a hard-hitting statement because I live my life completely out. I say to myself, I've got no issues with my sexuality and who knows or whatever, but there are times where I do feel anxious about presenting myself as a rainbow dad.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely. I think we've all sat there. I know I've sat there with my kids at at the shopping centre playground, and I'm sitting there with all mums who are there.
Yeah.
And they probably don't know each other. Maybe they do, but they're all chit-chatting away. And I feel like I don't belong to be there. I will definitely not start a conversation with them because I don't want to be seen as who's this bloke sort of interfering in our conversation.
Yeah.
It's sort of you can feel it. It's like it feels like it belongs to inverted commas true parents who are not queer dads.
For sure. So I think digressing. So the question was, how do you navigate your relationship with a new child? A new baby in the mix?
Well, you'd want to. I know in therapy, and I guess I'm going to talk about this in what we see in the counselling space, or what I've seen is that you'd want to understand did the relationship look like before they had children, and what were their expectations post children? Maybe they didn't necessarily have expectations because you just get busy being a parent, don't you?
Totally. You get exhausted.
It's a shock to the system.
Total shock.
And
I don't think that's unique to Rainbow Dads.
No.
It's across the board.
Yes. I think what is unique to Rainbow Dads is because we are, and queer men, I think there are some pressures with us having to conform to a type of masculinity that's going to be looked at as accepted by society. So we are wanting to be really well employed. We want to earn a lot of money. A lot of queer people tend to be high achievers and work really hard to strive for that level of social acceptance. If it's not going to be because of their sexuality, it can be through other ways. And so you get two dads who come or two men who come together to have a relationship, and we are socialized to be competitive as guys, to be aggressive at times when we're trying to stand our ground and push our point and to be taken seriously.
And I dare say that these things would be subconscious. You wouldn't consciously know that these were your behaviours.
Absolutely. Not necessarily, but, and so one of the things I know, I work with a couple where the one who wanted to really have children, the one who was really pushing for it, the one who already had a surrogate in mind, the one who had it all planned out.
There's always a leader.
And the other, there was always a leader. And the other person said, yeah, absolutely, let's do it. It sort of fell on the person who was pursuing it, the leader who had to sacrifice their career. There was this sort of presumption that because you want this so badly, and so do I, but you're the one really driving this, maybe let's talk about how you're going to take time off. For
It makes me laugh because when Stephen and I first had our kids, I think in the first year, because it was such a shock, there were nights where you'd get no sleep and you'd just be on edge. Our go-to argument was Stephen saying to me, well, you wanted this.
Right. Yes.
It was just his get out of jail free card. Yeah.
So conflict is incredibly common, and conflict can intensify. So if we have a way of doing conflict and differences and arguments pre-children, it's not unusual to see that start to intensify when there are children on the scene. Okay. Because the other thing to go, if it's not only your career or sleep, right? It's the experience of autonomy. We are, I think, men, if we're thinking about gender socialization, where, little girls and women are socialized in a world to be accommodating of the relational needs of the other, whereas little boys and men are very used to having their needs accommodated, right, in family, right, in family relationships. So autonomy is really important for all of us, but I think particularly we get sort of cozy in that place of being autonomous. Forget autonomy when you have a dependent, vulnerable baby in the house.
Yes,
right?
yeah, for sure.
This is no longer about you.
Yeah.
All right. And I think that so you do sort of lose your own sense of your own needs and also and the relationship. So, that sense of having the relationship focused on your needs for closeness and intimacy. You need to be held.
It's almost like a hierarchy, isn't it? Like the baby comes on and they're at the top of the pyramid. You have to make sure that you attend to them. They're everything.
Yes.
Then underneath that is yourself, because you're kind of plugged into yourself. You know what? Because you are you.
Yes. And
then right at the bottom is that relationship that probably was positioned differently before the baby came along.
I think so. And it's not done in a way that feels unreasonable. Everyone in the household would understand, yes, this is how it needs to be, 100%.
Yeah. But just going back to, giving up the career and all the rest of it, there's that, it's both sides of the fence, isn't it? Because, I speak to parents of dads of a newborn baby, and the one that is going to work said, oh, I couldn't wait to get back to work. Couldn't wait to put on a suit and just get out of the house and start adulting. But then that crosses a line where, the stay-at-home parent is there for all those milestones, and the one working hard is missing out on it. And so it's this push and pull of, resentment. You might be at one stage, if you're the stay-at-home dad, resenting the dad going out and getting to work. But then the dad getting to work might be working late nights and working really difficult and might miss the first steps or the first words.
Yes.
And so it's that push and pull in a relationship of, perhaps maybe resentment.
And more, resentment, and more missing the milestones. It's missing the day-to-day routine and the adjustments that are made where baby can start eating solids now, or we've got baby on the toilet now, or, or no, we're not giving them the iPads after dinner anymore. And so there's all these decisions that are made when you're the at-home parent that the other parent needs to be clued in with. And what happens when you're the dad who comes home, who's missed the kids and can't wait to get into the door and to make up for lost time, the last thing you're going to want to do as that dad is to enforce the regime.
For sure, you're the fun dad.
You're the fun dad because you want to, you're so delighted to see them. They're delighted to see you. And what happens with all this hard work that parent who's been home has been enforcing the regime that's now we've got in a good rhythm. We don't want to mess it up.
Have you been spying on our house?
I know this as well. Okay.
I can't tell you how many arguments that Stephen and I have had over that very thing. I'll implement something because I know it's short-term pain for long-term gain, that there's real structure. They're not allowed to have their iPads because I've got a 7 and 8 year old. You're not allowed to have the iPads during the week. There's certain times that you have to do this. After school, let's get you in your after school clothes. There's a routine.
You have to keep them focused, these kids.
And Stephen will just disregard it.
Yeah.
And it will just drive me nuts.
Look, I would lie if I sat here and I was going to preach all this stuff. And look, I identify strongly with Stephen. I get into a lot of conflict and into a lot of trouble, but it's about how to, and then if the spousal relationship, that intimate adult relationship is starting to be a bit neglected or starting to be deprioritized.
Chipped away at, I would say.
Chipped away at. Yeah. Now it's being sort of met with these clashes throughout maybe at rush hour in the mornings or at night when we're all together. So it does start to put a bit of strain on the relationship. The parental experience starts to add this weight to the relationship between dads.
So what do you do already you and I are identifying with a lot of the things that we're saying, which means that any dad listening will be identifying. What happens when the relationship starts to be chipped away at for all those things?
Look, in therapy, I guess what I would be interested in is understanding what we would call the dynamic that gets going between the couple. Yeah. What's that? The dynamic is the tension.
Yes.
What does the clash look like? What's the upset in there? And when we start to sort of look a little bit closer into the dynamic, we start to see a story that's happening in there. And the story does involve some anxieties about family, about maybe if resentment comes up for one partner because they're not feeling supported and they're feeling very sort of unfocused on in their adult relationship with their partner. So we might be, and that's not being communicated to your partner in a way that can really get your partner's attention. Like if I can't say to my partner, hey, I miss you. I love you. I'm at home with the kids all day. I'm exhausted. And I'm feeling a bit forgotten by you. And then, and that's been hard for me. That's it's hard to say that when there's wear and tear in the relationship and you're frustrated and every day's go, go, go and you need to keep going. It's probably going to sound like, where the fuck have you been?
Yeah. I'd be like, don't you patronize me with those words.
Right. Yeah.
So if there is a go-to, like, oh, okay, here we are back at this same spot again, same shit, different day. Yeah. How do you have that conversation with your partner? Is obviously not in the moment because it's not going to be heard or received. When's the moment to actually bring that up and say, hey, right, we keep going back to this place, I'm not feeling blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. It's a good question because you definitely don't want it to do it when the heat's been turned up in the relationship, right? Because you're not going to hear it. You're going to be defensive. You're going to be ready for a fight. Yeah. At any softer time of the relationship, but that may not even guaranteed either.
No, because it would be like, oh, for fuck's sake,
here we
you're bringing
go.
it up now. Just had some peace and quiet, and you've decided to switch.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, I often have couples where the guys tell me that the last thing that we want to do at the end of the night when the kids are in bed and we're finally pouring each other a glass of wine, the last thing that we want to do is talk about how we've been upsetting each other.
Absolutely.
And so it is hard. I want to say this as well, that I think that a lot of the couples that I see who have a lot of family support or have the financial resources to get support, right? If it's just the couple doing it all, even if they've got one child, right, the lack of family support does make it more strained. I think it's a lot heavier. There's a bigger burden. Yeah, absolutely. Because when you've got grandparents who could just step in. Thankfully, I live down the road from our children's grandparents. We can just call them.
Everyone needs a set of grandparents for sure.
And enthusiastic grandparents that you can also get along with, right?
Yeah.
But it's without that extended family support, if you're just doing it on your own as a couple, it is a lot. It's a lot.
Yes.
And you're on the go, and you probably don't get a lot of time to stop and pause and to really reflect and together on the relationship.
I think you can get into your own mindset of far out. Like I'm the stay-at-home dad managing 2 kids. I feel like the kids' PA. I do. They're in lots of after-school activities. And slave, for sure. And I tell them that all the time, and I catch myself and I'm like, I'm my mother, because I'm like, I'm not the slave in this household. Picking up towels, and the kids are just looking at me, God, what's wrong with him?
I've heard myself saying, all right, family meeting now. That's what my mother used to say.
Mine too.
My partner says, shut up.
But you get so stuck in, well, I'm doing this, I'm managing appointments, I'm managing this, I'm managing that. Then Stephen gets stuck in all the stuff that he's doing. He's working his butt off. He's missing out on stuff. He's doing meetings and all the rest of it. So it's sometimes really difficult to stop and go, okay, I'm just going to take my shoes off for a moment and put Stephen's on to just kind of see where he's coming from. I get absolutely stuck in, no, I want you to hear my point of view, and I'm not letting it go because you don't understand how much I've been through. He's saying, I don't understand how much he's been through.
Well, that's a symptom. That's a beautiful example of what maybe one of the symptoms of a mutual sense of neglect sounds like.
Right.
What about me? What about me?
Yes.
You know, you haven't done this for me. Well, you haven't done this for me. What about everyone's saying, notice me, look at me, respond to me.
Yeah.
You know, and it is so
Which is that dynamic that you were talking about. We play our position so well when we're in a fight. It's almost predictable.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you're doing this, I'm doing this.
Right.
I can.
And so who's going to want to make time for the partner who feels like the enemy? Right? Who's going to want to make time? Who's even going to want to have sex with a partner who?
Well, I mean, that's a whole different topic, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, there's sexual neglect, emotional neglect.
Yeah. Stephen, this morning, actually, I'm obviously reflecting on my own relationship, which is a good relationship for anyone.
You have a great relationship, yeah.
But
we're going to the dark side.
He kissed me on the lips this morning as he was leaving because he was in a good mood and he's not a morning person. He goes, I just want to let you know I love you and I'm grateful for you.
Oh.
And I was like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah. Yeah.
What have you done?
Yeah.
We're just coming off the weekend. Have you done something?
Yes. Well, I mean, your radars detected something there.
But it's like, you know, even in those little pockets where you go, you know what? I'm going to respect you and I'm going to try and see it from your point of view. If the other person's not in the same frame of mind, they're like, what's wrong with you?
Well, I mean, there is neurobiologically what happens when we're anxious and we're feeling defensive or protective in our relationships or in the world is that our limbic system lights up, which is the fight and flight place, right? Which says, danger, be careful, right? Protect yourself. And so even ambiguous information that we pick up on in our relationships when we're in that place can be experienced as threatening or anxious.
Yeah.
You know, so, I mean, it's so hard. I mean, there's so, and the other thing that we haven't mentioned is just how maybe deep some of these anxieties can go, because we're no longer in a relationship just with our partner. We're in a relationship with the dad, you know? Yeah. And so...
And the pressures too of being a dad.
The pressures of being a dad, of experiencing ourselves as a dad, but also being in relationship, in family again with the dad. In our adult family relationships, we're back in that relationship with dad or our attachment caregiver, whether if you grew up with the dad or not. There's something about now you're in a... And you do notice that, don't you? Remember you had the kids, when you first had the kids, you were excited and you started to see what it was like to interact as dads with each other. It was a new experience to notice each other doing dadly things.
Yeah.
You know?
No, that's very true. And also just reflecting on my own parents. I never understood my mum and dad until I became a parent myself. And it sounds really corny, and I catch myself when I'm saying it to non-dads. Once you become a parent, it's like this secret door of this world that you're like, oh, I get it. I get it.
Have you apologized to your parents for anything yet?
No, I haven't gone as far as apologizing because then I feel like I would owe them something.
Okay.
But I do say all the time, I just get why you did this. My parents had 4. And so I was in the middle, so stereotypical. I felt neglected and I was just overlooked and all the rest of it. And then when I became a parent, I was like, oh, okay, I get why you did that. And then I'm always triggered into situations where I feel like I'm either my mum or my dad in the same scenario, repeating it, going, oh my God, this is freaky. And then I'll say to mum, oh, this happened or whatever, and it reminded me of growing up or whatever.
So our parenting is more than just what we can set up with our partners, and also what books we read, and I guess how we understand parenting in our culture and what the messages are. It's deeply entrenched in terms of what's been wired into us, the way we were parented.
For sure.
And there's a beautiful book called Parenting from the Inside Out by Dan Siegel that I'd really recommend to people. It's a lovely example of what you talked about just then, Murray, about the way that we experienced parenting when we were little humans, and how that sort of shapes the way that how we draw from this internalized map that was constructed very early about what it's like between the caregiver and child relationship.
Yes, yeah.
And so we draw from those maps all the time, and our partner draws from theirs. And sometimes these maps are obviously not identical.
No.
And so of course we're going to clash. And that's why parenting that's why when we become parents, conflict can intensify. We're in the deep family experience together where we're activating some sometimes fairly primitive anxieties that can get going between us.
Yeah.
So looking after the spousal relationship is actually really important, and we don't often have time to pause and reflect and hold each other's hand and say, I love you. And even if that does happen, we might say, what the fuck are you up to?
So what do we do? Do we go and see her? Is the only way to go see a relationship counsellor, or are there steps that can be implemented beforehand?
Well, I think if one or both of you recognise that the relationship's in trouble, then that's a pretty clear signal that you need to do something. And therapy is not always the answer. It doesn't need to be. I had a couple that I was working with them for over a year, and I felt really stuck with them, and they came back from Bali and they were so bonded, their lights were lit up, and their faces had lit up, and they said, oh, that was so great. It's the best thing we've ever. I said, don't spend your money on me then. Go on holidays.
Do you know what? That is so, so, so true. When all the holidays, because we love to holiday, all the holidays that we go on just reignites everything. It's a reset, switched off from work. We're together. We're not in the hustle and bustle of everyday life, and all the clouds dissipate and it's pure sunshine. I'm telling you. Yeah.
Yes.
So maybe that advice, guys, go on holidays.
Well, there's that. Yes. And I had a conversation with my colleague yesterday about queer men and our dads. And I think given that now as parents we're in relationships with dads again, i.e. our partner, I wonder about what do we know about attracting the love and attention, the affection of a dad in family. A lot of us have had very problematic relationships with our fathers in the family, probably with our mothers too, but there's something about coming out as queer or gay in our families and the experience that we might have from the head man of the tribe, the model of masculinity in the family. Yeah. You know, if there's, I think that there is something about, if we're thinking about those sort of historical sort of primitive maps we draw from, what were some of the ways that we might have attracted the affection and care of our dads in our families? Because if we don't have a good enough example there, then think about what you're saying that we're trying to do in our adult relationships. Yes. The dad in the family, our partner, and we've lost his care and focus. Yes. What do? I mean, we might protest pretty strongly about that happening again.
Yes, for sure. So any other strategies that you can give couples? Come on.
I've got to be careful because for what might work for one couple may not work for the other. But you'd need to.
So I guess from what I'm hearing, sorry to cut you off, it's about checking in. You need to have, would you dare say, a regular, I know you don't want to give like blanket advice, but would you say making time, if it was even once a week, to check in and it's just relationship time, would that be good?
I mean, who would argue with that?
No, right?
Yeah. Of course.
I would have been surprised if you said no. That's a terrible idea.
No, of course. I mean, like you said earlier, the spousal relationship, the intimate partner bond, is so easily neglected because of the demands of these needy children who
Yes.
attract your care and focus very strongly. Okay.
Yeah. And dad, shut up.
Yes. Yeah. How often I hear myself saying, please would be nice.
Yes, I'll say it all the time. Or I grip something. So if they want something, I won't let it go, and we'll just do this stare down. And I'm like, I'm not saying it. You need to say please. And then they're like, please.
Yes.
And then the banana's suddenly released into their hands.
Yes. I mean, you have a common and maybe a mutual tension around, not only adjusting to parenthood, but when you're really into it now, that all these little examples throughout the day where we feel so responsible for socializing our children in the whatever right way is.
And that's a huge weight as well.
So that they're well-mannered, that they're not having too much screen time, they're eating their veggies. These are the pressures we can all feel, right? And so we share that with our partner. And so, I think looking at the shared themes, the shared anxieties, the shared worry, the shared hopes, something that can bring you together, because I think parenting and the different ideas that we each have with how we might parent our children at times and the times that we might clash, we can feel like we're sort of in opposition to each other a lot as parents. So finding somewhere, a place that we share a common hope, we share a common anxiety about something that brings you together, I think would be really important.
Okay. Now, before we wrap up this episode, I think it's really important to talk about sex. And navigating that space when you become a new parent. I've got tired newborn, no sleep, one's getting to go off to work, so you're resenting them that they get to put on a suit or they get to adult.
They get to look hot.
And they get to look hot, right? And they get to mix it up. They get to go out for Friday night drinks because, that's the workplace are doing that. And you've got baby spit on you and you just, you've been eating a block of chocolate and you've had some wine or whatever. And then you're like, well, why don't you find me sexy?
You haven't had a chance to have a shower for 2 days. Yeah. And your breath stinks. And, aren't you attracted to me anymore? Yeah.
What happens when sex kind of dwindles and dies in? And it would be very common, I would imagine, when you become new parents or being parents. What that would be a theme that you would see, right?
Definitely. And I think anyway in long-term relationships, that's the sexual attraction and the intensity of the interest sort of dies off anywhere between, I think, 6 months to 2 years. They call it the limerence phase stage. So it's expected that it's going to die down, and that's when we say.
I always have a little chuckle when I meet friends of mine that are in a new relationship. Oh, we're having so much sex. I'm like, honey, give it time.
Yeah, it's a real shame that so many people conclude that maybe we don't love each other anymore. I love you, but I'm not in love with you anymore. I hear that a lot when people have lost that sexual spark, and I just think, no. The real attachment relationship begins now.
Right.
This is where we're in the serious business of the relationship now. But I think that.
So you're saying it's not an issue. It's not a problem unless it's a problem for them.
Well, if it's a problem for them, what are they doing about it? But also, it's a common part of the progression of a long-term relationship.
Right.
And I think it's important people know that because I think so many good relationships have ended because they have lost a degree of sexual interest in each other. Right. But they may get along and really enjoy each other in every other way, domestically and emotionally.
Yeah, don't put that too high up on the pedestal.
Well, I mean, we can always get a fuck buddy. That'll get us through.
Well, no, that's where I find it interesting, right? Because if you are in a relationship where that's, allowed and to be non-monogamous, how does that then navigate in terms of, it was fine before when we were both doing it, but I'm at home with fucking baby. I've got spit on me. I'm feeling fucking fat. I'm eating a block of chocolate and I'm having a bottle of wine tonight and you're fucking getting to go to work and having your Friday night drinks and then getting...
And when you're not getting the same hits on Grindr as you used to. It's a soul-searching journey. Yeah. Look, I think it becomes the problem for the relationship. How can it be dad's problem, dad who's home, feeling awful about himself and not feeling attractive and valued? How can it be only his problem? It needs to be the problem for the relationship. And I think that's where the couple needs to come together, like you said earlier. How do we check in? How do we talk about this stuff in a way that brings us together, not in a way that says, oh, fuck, here we go again.
Yes.
Aren't you fucking that guy you met a few weeks ago? So I think, but sex, I mean, it is very unsexy. Look, I think that we should not, this is my personal opinion and it's informed by my work as well. we shouldn't expect it to just be easy, that we're going to have that stirring up of strong, intense sexual attraction towards our partners. And maybe especially when we've got kids, because of all the things we talked about and how tired we are. So maybe it does require a little bit of effort. It shouldn't feel like a job or a project, because that's not sexy either.
But I think as well, what you said earlier is taking the pressure off, feeling like, okay, we're not having sex as much or any more or whatever, there's somehow a failure of the relationship. No, that's not the case.
Not.
It's that you're deeply entrenched in your relationship. Everything else works. I think it's okay, and I think it's quite normal that you probably didn't find each other as hot as what you did when you first started going out.
Well, possibly, but also it's an area of the relationship that just needs work.
Yeah.
If you both see it as a problem. I've worked with relationships that have been...
Well, what about if only one saw it as a problem?
Well, then that's even a bigger problem.
Yeah, right.
But if I've worked with sexless relationships where people, and this has been hard because our culture says to us that a, inverted commas, healthy relationship is one where people are sexually active, and that's not true. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are asexual people out there who will tell you that it's not true. But but if it is a problem, if sexual intimacy, the neglect of it or the lack of it, or the anxiety that we don't have it anymore, if that's there, then definitely it's a problem, Yeah. I mean, it takes effort. It does. I mean, I jump into bed and I just, I can't. I just want to scroll through TikTok, look at sort of mind-numbing nonsense. That's what I'm prioritizing over. But then I guess the other thing is that the anxiety of, I mean, I'm going to be 50 in 2 years. Yeah. I can't use my body with the same degree of confidence that I used to in my 20s, right? Yes. And so, I just think, I feel inadequate. There's an inadequacy that comes with older bodies as well. But I think that being able to share that openly with our partners so that we can look after each other sexually is important.
Do you know what? I'm just still stuck on what you said earlier. It's not, stop trying to make that the biggest issue, Well,
it's yes, and
because you said a lot of couples come in and say, "What was it? I love you, but I'm not in love with you."
Yeah. I think if sex is there, and happening regularly, and it's enjoyable, we don't even think about it, about its function in the relationship. When it's not there, it's about 80% of our focus. Do you know what I mean?
Why would you say that it is, though? Is that because of what we've been taught, that a relationship must have that?
I definitely think that's part of it. Also, think about the experience of connection when you're having sex with your partner, right? The production of dopamine and oxytocin and serotonin in the brain, that feeling of just having been sexually intimate, even if it was a quick fuck in the bedroom or wherever, that thing that you shared with your partner that's for you and your partner.
Yes.
That feels really rejuvenating, doesn't it, for the relationship?
Yeah, you're right.
So I think it is a very healthy and important conversation to be having about. And I'm not a sex therapist, but I've heard from sex therapy people, there's a lovely strategy that they use around the sexual menu. Mm-hmm. What's on your sexual menu? Because we think that maybe, having anal sex or intercourse or coming is what the goal is, what needs to happen. But successful sexual interaction.
Hold my hand.
Hold my hand, gaze into my eyes and, put your finger somewhere. But I think, look, whatever's on your menu, let each other know what's on your menu.
Yeah, I love that.
You know what I mean? Because maybe blowjobs is all enough for a couple, and that might,
Can I just lick your balls, maybe?
That's right.
No, great advice. Thank you, Anthony, for coming on and chatting with us today. I feel like I'm going to get you back. I'm going to rope you in again. If anyone has been listening to this, we'll pop a lot of the things that Anthony has mentioned in the show notes. But I think the takeaway message is just check in, have chats and just regularly check in with each other. Thanks, Anthony.
Thanks, Mary.